So the first of the three Tanaim that the Mesilas Yesharim, beginning of Parak Chaf, the Mesilas Yesharim, we're on page Kuf Tes, the Mesilas Yesharim tells us is to have a yashrus, to think straight. Sheyeh liba yashar shebelavavos. Now, to have liba yashar shebelavavos, that's not just a question of, okay, think straight, be yashar. It's much more than that, because our hearts, as we've been describing, our hearts are inherently biased. They're inherently biased. We don't even recognize our own biases. It's hard to see sometimes out of our own biases. That's why sometimes we need a friend to point something out to us, because we don't see it ourselves. So this is when he says it, he writes it like, it's like, okay, no problem. Like, go to the store and buy 3 things. So one of them is you should have a straight heart. No, that's a lifetime of work. The more that a person works on their midos, the more that a person purifies himself from being from the draw to the pleasures or the distractions of this world, the more straight he thinks, the more a person has clarity about why he exists in this world and what Hashem wants from him, the more straight that person can think. And with that yashrus, that's what allows a person to make the right calls when it comes to different actions of chasidus. A person will make the right calls because his heart is yasher. So that was the first one that we saw yesterday, 2 days ago. Okay, the second one. Shaloi V'shayiyah me'ayin. You see where it is? You got it? There. V'shayiyah me'ayin al ma'asav iyun gadol. And that a person should examine his actions with a big magnifying glass, with tremendous iyun. V'yishtadel l'saknom al pi hatachlis hazeh. And he should attempt to fix, to improve his actions with this purpose of bringing a nachas ruach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the first step is to have a straight heart. The second step, apparently having a straight heart, that doesn't mean that you're a chassid yet. The second step is to be able to act on it, to be able to implement, to be able to not be paralyzed, to put your thoughts and your priorities and your value system into action, to actually act on it. To examine a person examines his actions. It's not just about the future, it's about the past also. A person examines his actions, and when he notices that something veered off of that yashrus, that something wasn't 100% yasher, he goes back and he fixes it and he improves it. To whatever extent the person could still be misakeh things in their life. So, if there's if a person recognizes an issue with his tefillah, and after being ma'ayin, he recognizes that the way he's handling a certain challenge in tefillah is not correct. He puts his attention to it, and he begins to try to do that. If he realizes a mistake in business, he looks back and realizes, I wasn't quite so honest. When you have an expense account in a business, a lot of times you could play with that, and it's infamous. It's a challenge to be able to be completely honest and straightforward about an expense account. But one general good rule of thumb is that if you're trying to hide something from someone in the company, you're probably not doing something right. You know what I mean? You made a judgment, I think it's okay for me to do this, but don't tell anyone. If you said don't tell anyone, maybe you're a little biased in your decision. I had a situation recently that in a few months I'm traveling to Israel with my wife. Now, I'm traveling for the yeshiva. My wife is not traveling for the yeshiva. My wife is traveling to see her kids. Okay? So I'm traveling with her. Because I'm traveling with her, I took a cheaper flight than I ordinarily would. The yeshiva covers my flight. The flight that I would have taken without her covers my ticket and her ticket in the other flight. The way things work out. Wow. So you're referring to something, right? Oh, I thought you were referring to something. I'll tell you in a second. So somebody told me Okay, so cover your wife's flight. I mean, the yeshiva would be willing to pay, let's say, $2,500 for your flight. And now we got two flights, $1,200 apiece. Like, I'm making up the numbers, but let's say, okay? The yeshiva was willing to pay the $2,500 for your flight. So now that you're taking this flight, the yeshiva was ready to pay $2,500. So why can't I just take $2,500 and use it to get two flights? He likes the cheshbon. Is that thinking yashar? Is that yashar? I mean, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because even though sometimes when you work for a school or a business, the way things are defined sometimes feels arbitrary, but there are certain klalim. Your travel is covered. Your wife's travel is not covered. It's true. When push comes to shove, they're willing to spend that kind of money on your travel. But you decided to take a cheaper flight, a cheaper ticket. So now your flight is half the price. It doesn't give you change. You know, when I'm doing that, I'll be like, you know what? I'll just take a cheaper flight and I'll go on vacation with the rest of the money. Like, no, the money is not mine. The money is available to do what the yeshiva asked me to do. Even if I find a cheaper way to do it, that doesn't give me a right to ransack the yeshiva's expense account. Do you hear what I'm saying? That's the MS. That's the real MS. But it's easy for me to tell myself. It's seductive. You know something? They're not going to notice the difference. They were prepared to pay the expensive ticket. They won't notice the difference. It doesn't matter. And sometimes for me, my simon is, would I just go into the Turo office and say, by the way, thank you for paying for my wife's flight? Would I do that? Or they'll be like, what are you talking about? We don't pay for it. No, but I worked it out because it would have been like this. No, it's not your money. And then people do things with businesses or universities. People do the same thing. Like, they have so much money anyway. Is that a cheshbon for anything? Like when Hashem said don't steal, he was like, don't steal from poor people. I know that Robin Hood has like this allure, you know, steal from the rich and give to the poor, but it is absolute gneva to do that. You don't know who Robin Hood is?
Oh, the movie?
But before there was a movie, there was a legend. There was a story. You don't know what I'm talking about?
You were talking about the broker too.
You guys are so uneducated.
No, I know Robin.
You're so uneducated.
Oh, it's a movie?
It's an old legend that has been turned into many movies and TV shows and books. But it's an old legend of a guy in medieval Europe somewhere, England maybe, Germany maybe. I don't know where it started. A guy who shoots a bow and arrow, and he steals from the rich. The thing is, that's what I know about him, that he steals from the rich and gives to the poor. So if you find someone, there are people who they don't mind stealing from rich people, but they're big balei tzedakah. We call them like Robin Hoods. You know, steal from the rich and give to the poor. But that's gneva. That's gneva. The fact that you think that rich people should be more generous, first of all, al tadin es chaverecha asher tagiya l'mkoimah. You know, don't judge your friend until you're in that situation. You know, it's very easy. I don't like it when I hear people who are struggling financially being negative about people that have a lot of money. Like sometimes you'll hear about someone that has a very good parnasa, and he'll be like, and you'll hear a comment like, "You think the guy could spare $50,000? He probably wouldn't notice it." And he probably wouldn't notice it. But I feel like it's very crass to talk that way. Because Baruch will give everyone what they need. Stop looking over at other people. Everyone has their wealth that Hashem gave them. Some of it is in money, some of it is in other things. Calm down. You know what I mean? Like, you know, so that's another thing. Also, I've seen it over my lifetime a few times that people that grow up or when they're younger or earlier in their career, they don't have money, and then they do well after that. Watch how quickly they shift. Watch how quickly they shift gears. One of my favorite stories is a story that I once heard from an uncle of mine. It's not a true story, but it's just a mashal. I say this over a lot because it shows this nekuda of how minds change. Speaking about a yashar heart, the story is about this old. I've said it over in this shir before, It's a very musser mashal. It's about this guy who lives on the outskirts of a city in Russia back in the day, and he's poor as anything, starving poor. And he takes his old like should be retired donkey, and he walks into town, and he goes over to the shopkeeper, the grocery store owner, and he says, "I have 1 ruble left to my name. Is there anything that I could buy to eat?" And the shopkeeper says, "There's nothing you can buy for 1 ruble. But you know what? You might as well buy a lottery ticket. Lottery tickets are 1 ruble. You never know, right? You know, buy a lottery ticket." He buys the lottery ticket, shuffles back home, poor, penniless, broken. He gets back to his old hut, creaking on the hinges, almost falling off, the door almost falling off when he goes in. He finds his hay mat on the floor, and he goes to sleep. It's midnight, and the storekeeper gets a telegram from the head office of the lottery office. This guy won. He's worth millions of dollars, millions of rubles. The guy's so excited that he dashes out to these outskirts of town. He's galloping along on his horse, galloping to just tell this guy that his tzaras are over, Bangs on the door, bang, bang, bang. This guy's on his hay, there's hay all over him. He gets up, opens the door. He's like, "Yeah, how can I help you?" And the guy says, "You're rich! You won the lottery!" So the guy gets up, picks himself higher, looks over at the guy. It says, "And you dare wake up a rich man in the middle of the night." It's a great story, right? It's a true story. The story never happened, but what the story represents is 100% true. I don't like the whole concept, like rich people, this type of thing. Rich people should be doing more. There are generous rich people, and there are stingy rich people. There are generous poor people, and there are stingy poor people. And it's just not our business to give a stock on each person, that's for sure. But anyway, when it comes to Geneva, just because someone should be giving more tzedakah is not an excuse to take money from them. It's very important. When we were at the retreat, I don't know how many of you were there when Rabbi Marcus spoke in the morning, the panel, but he said over a Maisa, that's what I thought you were referring to. He said over a Maisa from his grandfather, Rabbi Sonnenschein, Zechariah Livracha, that he said that there was one time that he was flying from New York to Chicago, and his mother-in-law was flying with him. She lived in New York, he lived in Chicago, so he was here for Parnasa, for whatever he did here. He was flying back with his mother-in-law so she could spend some time with the family. In those days, he walked into an airport, you gave them some money, you bought a ticket. It wasn't like today. He goes into the airport, he says, "I'd like 2 tickets to Chicago." So they say, "It's your lucky day. We have a couple's deal. The husband buys a ticket, the wife flies free." So Reb Aaron says, "Thank you, I appreciate it, but this is not my wife, it's my mother-in-law. So I'll take 2 tickets. So the ticket agent says, "Rabbi, they're not going to be checking your marriage license. Man, woman, you can do it. You could go, that's it. In those days, man, woman. So Reb Aaron says to the person, "I just want to ask you, are you authorized to change the policy for me?" The guy's like, "No." This guy, "Please speak to your supervisor." So the supervisor comes over and says, "Of course, you're a couple. You look like a fine couple. You can go on, buy one, get one free, no problem." Rabbi Soloveitchik says, "Are you authorized to offer me that deal? Because it says here couples, husbands and wives." The guy's like, "I don't know, it's logical, whatever." No, paying for 2 tickets. He paid for 2 tickets. I'm sure he didn't have extra money to throw around. But that's Yashrus, right? That's Yashrus. If you realize you made a mistake, you fix it. That's what the Mesilas Yesharim is saying now. You look back. If you look back, that time that I was working for a camp, so I decided to take an extra spin in the camp van, and then when something broke, I charged the camp for it, and really I was just using it for my own stuff. Maybe I should pay the guy back. Let me give him a call. And you can do that. Let me give him a call and say, "I'm just thinking about the summer. I think I might owe you money." so on and so forth. To be misake in what we did. With money, it's easier to be misake than other things. Sometimes it's also about an apology. Sometimes it's a change of course. Sometimes it's tshuva. Sometimes it's a way to do things differently. But examine our actions with a tremendous magnifying glass. And to attempt to fix them according to this tachlis. Okay, we'll stop here.